Hold tight! Commander Zarek Thorne barked into the comms as the Vanguard rattled violently, the ship's hull groaning under the pressure of a sudden gravitational anomaly. Through the cockpit's reinforced windows, the distant outline of the Sentinel loomed like a dark, silent sentinel on the edge of the galaxy, its structure barely visible against the backdrop of an endless, star-dusted void. It was a place few had dared to venture, and even fewer had returned from. Zarek's fingers gripped the edge of his seat as the Vanguard shuddered again, a shockwave slamming into them. His sharp gaze flickered to the heads-up display, coordinates locked. He could feel the tension rising in the pit of his stomach. They were close, too close, and everything about this mission felt wrong. A decade's worth of whispers and rumors surrounded the ancient warship. Alien myths, human legends, and none of it made sense. Not yet. But soon, it would. "Commander!" Captain Thalran Kor's voice crackled through the intercom. "We've reached the perimeter. All systems are stable, but the readings, they're off the charts. Whatever's in there, it's waking up." Zarek nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the readings flashing across the laser plasma display. The data was scattered, inconclusive, yet something was undeniable. There was power coming from the ship, something ancient, still alive after millennia. His fingers danced across the console, trying to piece together the mystery, but the answers remained elusive. "All hands, prepare for boarding," he ordered, his voice steady despite the rising unease in his chest. The Vanguard had come too far to turn back now. Zarek stood from his command chair, the weight of his uniform heavy on his shoulders, as he walked toward the hatch. The ship was almost silent now, save for the faint buzz of the air recyclers. He paused at the doorway, a moment of stillness overtaking him. What would they find inside? Was this truly a relic, or something far worse? The airlock opened with a sharp hiss. Zarek stepped into the docking bay, the cold metal of the Sentinel greeting him like a forgotten world. The ship, still dormant yet seemingly aware of their presence, stretched out before him, dark and brooding. Its surface was covered in scratches, remnants of battles long past, but it was strangely pristine. The ship was as much a mystery as the ancient race that had built it. The custodians, the legends said, creators of weapons, and now, perhaps, humanity's salvation. "Everyone on standby," Zarek commanded, his voice as steady as the ship's automated systems, though his heart raced beneath the armor of his chest. The crew spread out behind him, each moving with the practiced efficiency of seasoned veterans. Behind Zarek, Lieutenant Xandor Valek followed, his eyes scanning the perimeter. "This place is off," Xandor muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "I can feel it in my bones." "Stay focused, Lieutenant," Zarek replied, his voice sharper than intended. He turned, locking eyes with the young officer whose unease mirrored his own. "We're here for answers, not for ghosts." The air inside the Sentinel smelled old, musty, like something long abandoned. The scent of oil and decay mixed with a strange, almost metallic tang, as if the ship itself was alive, breathing after centuries of slumber. The walls, once smooth and pristine, were now streaked with dust and time. Faint blue markings flickered on the walls as they passed, almost like veins pulsing with faint, unyielding light. "This is not what we expected," Captain Kor muttered, his voice full of awe. His boots clicked softly on the metal floor, and his hand hovered near his weapon, clearly uneasy. The silence was stifling. It felt as though the ship itself was watching them. Zarek glanced at the captain, his eyes narrowing. "We've only scratched the surface, Kor. Keep your head in the game. Whatever we find here, it's not just going to roll over." The deeper they ventured, the stranger the ship became. Each turn revealed more of the ancient architecture, a series of twisting corridors that seemed to defy logic, their structure almost alien in design. No clear pattern emerged, nothing that could be easily understood by human standards. This place was built by minds that saw space and time differently. The walls seemed to hum beneath their boots, vibrating with an energy that wasn't entirely mechanical. Something deeper was at play here. "This doesn't feel right," said Dr. Joran Vex, the ship's lead scientist, her voice laced with apprehension. "This technology, it's far beyond anything we've encountered. It's as though it's waiting for us." Zarek felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you mean, waiting?" Dr. Vex hesitated, tapping a series of readings into her handheld device. "I've been tracking some of these energy signatures. They're reactive. These aren't just passive systems. They're designed to respond, and they're responding to us." Her words hung heavy in the air as they continued down the narrow corridor. The temperature dropped noticeably, a chill creeping into their suits. Zarek felt it first in his fingers, a creeping cold that spread through his limbs like a slow-burning frost. He forced himself to keep moving, to ignore the creeping sensation that seemed to press against his chest. The next corner revealed something truly unexpected, a massive chamber, its dimensions impossible to calculate by the human eye. It was as though the room stretched on forever, a vast open space. In the center stood a towering machine, its surface covered in intricate designs, faintly glowing with an eerie blue light. The air here was thick with energy, heavy like the atmosphere before a storm. "What in the galaxy is that?" Captain Kor asked, his voice almost a whisper. "That's our answer," Zarek said, his voice steady as he studied the machine. It felt as though the entire room had become a part of this one creation, its presence suffocating everything around it. He moved forward, his boots echoing against the floor as he approached the structure. "This is what we came here for." But just as Zarek reached the center of the room, a low rumble vibrated through the ship. At first it was subtle, a mere tremor, but it grew stronger, almost as if the ship itself was waking up. Zarek's instincts kicked in, and he motioned for his crew to take cover. The machine before him seemed to pulse, its glow brightening with each passing moment. Dr. Vex turned sharply to Zarek. "Commander, this is impossible. This ship, it's reacting to us." Zarek's breath caught in his throat as he took a step back, his mind racing. "We're not alone here," he muttered, eyes locked on the machine that now hummed in synchrony with the ship itself. The ship was waking up, but not by its own accord. It had been waiting for something, someone, and that someone was standing right in front of it. The hum in the air grew louder, the walls vibrating more forcefully now. Zarek felt a strange weight in his chest, a sudden pressure, as if the weight of the galaxy itself had shifted. He looked at his crew, each of them frozen, their faces ashen with disbelief. "We've disturbed something," Zarek whispered to himself, a grim realization settling over him. "And now, we have to face the consequences." The Sentinel had stirred, and it was no longer just a relic. It was alive. And whatever had been waiting for them, whatever the legends had hinted at, was about to unfold. The deep rumble beneath their feet grew into a violent tremor, as if the Sentinel was coming to life, awakening from centuries of dormancy. Zarek felt his pulse quicken as the walls around them began to glow faintly, their once dull surfaces now lit by an eerie blue-green light. His fingers instinctively tightened around the hilt of his sidearm, the weight of his weapon grounding him as much as the stillness in the air. "Get to cover!" Zarek ordered, his voice cutting through the rising tension. His crew scattered without hesitation, moving into the shadows of the chamber, their eyes darting toward the humming machine at the center of the room. The energy in the air was thick, electric, almost suffocating. "Commander, what the hell is happening?" Captain Kor's voice came through the comm, his tone a mix of disbelief and concern. Zarek didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the glowing object before them, its surface shifting in waves of iridescent color. It was almost as if the ship itself was reacting to their presence. Its very walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with energy. The sensation was disorienting, and for a brief moment, Zarek wondered if they had made a grave mistake by waking it. The legends, the warnings from the alien factions, had they all been true? "We should pull back, Doctor," Vex suggested, her voice unsteady as she adjusted the scanner in her hands. "This ship is beyond anything we've studied before. There's no telling what it can do." "No," Zarek responded firmly, his voice cutting through the uncertainty. "We're too far in now. We've come for answers, and we're not turning back." The machine before them seemed to respond to his words, the colors swirling faster, more aggressively. A low rumble filled the air as if the sentinel was listening, comprehending. Zarek's mind raced. This wasn't just some ancient relic. It was something alive, something waiting. "Commander, the readings—" Dr. Vex's voice trailed off as her scanner beeped frantically, spitting out data that seemed to contradict itself. "It's almost like the ship is scanning us. Or testing us. Testing us for what?" Xandor's voice trembled slightly, the fear creeping into his tone despite his best efforts to remain calm. "What's inside this ship?" Before Zarek could answer, a loud crack echoed through the chamber. The blue glow intensified, flooding the room in an almost blinding light. The air thickened with the weight of something unfathomable, an oppressive presence. The Sentinel was more than just technology. It was a weapon, a repository of ancient knowledge. The very walls seemed to bend toward them, pulling them into a gravitational pull that made Zarek's head swim. "Everyone stay where you are!" Zarek barked, his hand raised to stop them from moving further. The pulse from the machine before them was getting stronger, and he could feel the ship's pulse reverberating through his bones. "Something's happening. Don't make any sudden moves." A sudden hiss split the silence, a panel in the floor sliding open with a smooth, almost unsettling precision. The air changed again, colder now, sharp against their skin as the light dimmed. Zarek took a cautious step forward, his boots making a faint echo on the smooth metallic surface beneath him. His breath fogged slightly in the air as he crossed the threshold of the newly revealed passage. "Looks like a control room," Captain Core murmured, his voice low, as they all slowly filed into the space. The walls were covered in strange symbols, their angular shapes far from any known writing system. They glowed softly, emitting a faint warmth that contrasted with the cold air of the corridor. "How is this even possible?" Dr. Vex asked, her voice thick with awe. She waved her scanner over the markings, her fingers trembling. "These symbols, they don't match any known language, not even remotely. And yet, there's something familiar about them." Zarek's eyes narrowed. The symbols were both alien and strangely familiar, like echoes of something long buried in humanity's past. Something whispered to him from deep within, but the words were lost. His hand hovered near one of the glowing markings, hesitating for only a moment before he touched it. The moment his fingers made contact, the ship seemed to exhale. A soft, low hum reverberated through the room, and the walls around them seemed to shift. A small compartment slid open to reveal a strange, crystalline object, larger than any human-made technology, yet elegantly simple in design. It was almost too beautiful for something so old, its facets gleaming in the dim light. "What is it?" Xandor asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as though the room itself could hear his words. Zarek stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the object. "I don't know, but it's no coincidence it's here." Before anyone could say anything further, a sudden sharp shriek cut through the room, reverberating off the walls with a haunting pitch. Zarek jerked his head toward the source of the sound, an unseen force that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The floor beneath them trembled, and the walls quivered as if alive. "What was that?" Captain Core demanded, his voice edged with panic. His hand instinctively gripped his weapon, but Zarek stopped him with a firm gesture. "Stay calm," Zarek said, his voice colder now, more commanding. "It's the ship. It's reacting to us. We've activated something, but we're not backing off now." Another tremor shook the ship, this one more violent than the last. Zarek felt his teeth rattle as the ship's pulse intensified. He could almost hear the heartbeat of the Sentinel, and it was coming faster, stronger, as though the ship was preparing for something. "I don't like this," Zandor muttered, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "We should have listened to the warnings." "No," Zarek replied, his tone unwavering. "The warnings were just rumors. We're here to uncover the truth. Whatever this ship is, it's more than just a weapon. It's the key to humanity's future." The ship shuddered again, this time in a series of rhythmic jolts, almost like the beating of a heart. Then the eerie blue light began to pulse faster, and a low, mechanical groan filled the air. From somewhere deep within the ship, a distant, grinding sound echoed, as if something enormous was being moved or woken. Zarek's heart raced as the realization hit him. The Sentinel was alive, or at least it was becoming so. Its systems were responding to their presence, activating in ways that defied human understanding. The legends had always said that the custodians left behind something extraordinary, but no one had ever imagined that it would be a living, breathing warship, a sentient vessel designed to protect a galaxy from something even more dangerous. "Commander?" Dr. Vex's voice broke through his thoughts, shaking him from the grim realization. She had turned her scanner to the far wall, where a new set of markings had begun to glow brighter than the rest. "These are different. They're not just symbols. They're coordinates." "Coordinates for what?" Zarek asked, his voice barely a whisper. Dr. Vex swallowed hard. "For a location, somewhere far beyond this galaxy, and based on these readings, it's not a place we want to be." Zarek's mind spun. The Sentinel was no longer just a ship. It was a message, a warning, a weapon, a guardian. But for what? "Get the crew ready," he ordered, his voice sharp with urgency. "We're not leaving here empty-handed. We've just begun to uncover something that could change everything." The eerie silence of the Sentinel's core was broken only by the soft rustle of boots on metal and the steady hum of the ship's systems coming to life. The strange markings that had appeared on the walls pulsed intermittently, as if the ship itself was breathing, alive with anticipation. Zarek stood at the center of the command room, his eyes scanning the laser plasma display in front of him. The coordinates had been locked in, and the ship was reacting with a will of its own. "This ship is unlike anything we've ever seen," Dr. Vex said, her voice tight with a mixture of awe and apprehension. She moved between the panels, her scanner flickering erratically, trying to make sense of the data streaming in. "The energy signatures, it's not just power being generated, it's something deeper, almost like a signal." A message Zarek's hand hovered over the console, his fingers brushing against the cold surface. It felt unnatural, almost as though the ship was resisting his touch, but he pushed the thought aside. There were more pressing concerns. Alien factions were closing in, and their position in the galaxy had just become precariously delicate. "Are we sure it's safe to keep going?" Captain Core asked from behind him, his voice low and careful. "This could be more than we bargained for." Zarek turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "We don't have a choice. We've come too far to pull back now." His voice was steady, though the weight of their situation pressed heavily on his shoulders. The Sentinel was both a blessing and a curse. The revelations they were uncovering were vast, but each answer only led to more questions, and behind it all loomed the ever-present threat of the void. "Commander? The fleet reports in." Lieutenant Zandor Valek spoke up, his eyes darting nervously across the heads-up display. The alien ships are entering the system, but we're not the only ones interested in this relic. Zarek turned his attention to the communication feed, which was now blinking urgently. Multiple ships, both human and alien, were beginning to converge on their position. Some were still too far out to make direct contact, but the threat of collision was imminent, and the longer they lingered, the more attention they attracted from hostile factions. "They're scared," Zarek muttered, almost to himself. "And they have every reason to be." The Sentinel wasn't just an ancient warship. It was a weapon designed to defend against something far more terrifying: the Void. And now that they had awakened it, the universe was watching. But what Zarek didn't understand was why the ship had chosen to respond to them, why their presence was triggering these ancient systems. It wasn't just a ship, it was a key. "Get the Vanguard in position," Zarek ordered, his voice sharp and unwavering. "I don't care if we have to fight our way out of here. We're staying. Prepare for potential engagement." The crew moved swiftly, the air growing colder with each passing second. A sense of urgency filled the room, amplifying the already thick atmosphere. The ship's interior had transformed from a dormant relic to a throbbing, pulsating entity, alive with purpose, and perhaps with a will of its own. Zarek could almost feel the weight of the ship's consciousness pressing against him, as if it was waiting for him to make the next move. "Sir, the readings are escalating," Dr. Vex called out, her voice barely audible over the increasing noise of the ship's reawakening. "I don't know what's happening, but it's not just the ship. Something else is coming." Zarek's stomach tightened. He had been waiting for this moment, had been expecting it, in fact, but hearing it now made the reality all the more terrifying. The Void was moving closer. "Are we sure we can defend ourselves?" Captain Kor's question was blunt, his eyes locking with Zarek's. There was no bravado in his voice, only a quiet concern that Zarek couldn't ignore. "The Sentinel isn't fully operational yet, but it's our best chance," Zarek replied, turning toward the laser plasma display. The systems were all there, shields, weaponry, engines, but they had yet to be fully activated. And now, with the Void nearing, they had no time to waste. "Captain, you and Lieutenant Valek stay here. Make sure the ship is ready for combat," Zarek continued, his mind already calculating the next steps. "Dr. Vex, I need you to interface with the ship's central core. Find a way to bring the weapon systems online." "I'll try," she answered, her voice tight with the pressure of the task at hand. "But I don't know how much longer we have." Zarek turned to face her fully. "We don't need to know how much time we have. We need to make the time we've got count." As the crew moved to their stations, the first signs of the Void appeared on the far reaches of the heads-up display. A flicker of movement at the edge of the galaxy, barely visible at first but quickly growing in intensity. Then came the radio transmissions, a flood of alien languages, each one demanding answers, warning of the impending danger. "We're not alone here," Xandor muttered under his breath, his fingers dancing across his console. "The enemy's here." Zarek could feel the tension in his spine, the adrenaline beginning to surge. He wasn't just commanding a mission anymore, he was leading a war. "Keep those shields up," Zarek snapped, his eyes glued to the screen. "I want every laser ready to fire at a moment's notice. If the Void thinks we'll just roll over, they're in for a surprise." But before he could give further orders, the Sentinel shuddered again. This time, more violently. The walls seemed to bend inward, the room groaning under the pressure of some unseen force. "The ship," Dr. Vex said, her voice strained as she looked at the central console. "It's activating, faster than I thought possible. The systems are connecting. It's like it's trying to synchronize with us." Zarek stood still, watching in stunned silence as the displays flashed and pulsed. It was happening, whether they were ready or not. The Sentinel was no longer just a ship. It was a weapon, and it was now fully aware of the threat closing in. The air in the room thickened with static, the ship's energy systems surging to life. "Brace for impact!" Captain Core shouted suddenly, his eyes wide. "We've got incoming!" Outside the Sentinel's viewport, the enemy ships appeared in full force, an assortment of alien vessels, each one different, but all carrying the unmistakable aura of hostility. They had come to claim the Sentinel for themselves, or destroy it if they couldn't, and they were closing in fast. The first blast hit the Sentinel's shields with a bone-rattling impact, throwing everyone to the ground. Zarek's heart hammered in his chest as he pulled himself back to his feet, his hand flying to the console. "Return fire!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The crew responded with swift efficiency, the Sentinel's weapons systems coming online. Laser bolts flew through the air, lighting up the space around them like flashes of lightning. The battle was on. The Sentinel's shields held firm, but the enemy wasn't backing down. The energy readings on the heads-up display spiked again, each blast from the alien vessels making the air crackle with tension. Zarek's mind raced, calculating their next move. "Captain, we need to hold them off until the Vanguard arrives," Zarek said, his voice steady despite the violence unfolding around them. "I don't care if we have to burn every last ounce of energy. We're not giving up this position." The ship responded to Zarek's command, its ancient systems now fully engaged, each weapon and shield system in perfect synchronization. The Sentinel was alive, and it was fighting back. But even as the first wave of the battle raged on, Zarek couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Void wasn't just a threat to the Sentinel or their fleet, it was a threat to everything. And he had no idea how much longer they could hold on before the real war began. The Sentinel shuddered under another barrage, its massive hull rattling from the force of the incoming fire. Zarek felt the impact deep in his bones, the thud of each hit reverberating through the ship's cold, sterile corridors. His knuckles were white as they gripped the arms of his command chair. Sweat beaded at his temple, but he remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the laser plasma display in front of him, tracking the hostile alien vessels now swarming the area. "Shields at 80%, Commander," Lieutenant Zandor reported, his voice tight, the low hum of the ship's systems drowning out all but the most urgent sounds. "We can't keep taking hits like this. Hold them off," Zarek snapped, his voice more a growl than a command. "We've got no choice." The crew was scrambling, each member at their station preparing for the next strike. Dr. Vex, her face drawn with exhaustion, hovered over the central console, her fingers dancing over the interface, trying to make sense of the chaos. "Commander, the Sentinel is responding, but not the way we need it to. It's not just shields and weapons. The systems are shifting, like the ship is analyzing the threat." Zarek's gaze locked onto the heads-up display, where a series of red dots moved relentlessly toward them, each alien vessel closing in. The Sentinel was still far from fully operational, and Zarek knew they were on borrowed time. The Void, an enemy so destructive, so all-consuming, that had been the original purpose of this ancient ship. But the ship itself seemed to hesitate, almost as if it wasn't ready for the confrontation that lay ahead. "We need to take control," Zarek muttered under his breath. "We can't wait for the ship to decide. We need a plan." Dr. Vex looked up sharply from her screen, sensing the weight of Zarek's words. "If we activate the weapon systems without full integration, we risk damaging the ship itself. It's not just an ancient warship, it's—" "I know," Zarek interrupted, his tone harder now. "But we don't have a choice. We can't afford to play it safe. They're not giving us that luxury." Captain Core, who had been silent until now, spoke up. His voice was clipped, his mind already calculating their next move. "We've got two options. We either engage and hope the ship's systems can hold long enough for us to knock out their weapons, or we pull back and use the Vanguard as a decoy." Zarek's eyes narrowed. The Vanguard wasn't the right option. They didn't have the firepower to withstand a full-on assault from multiple alien factions, not with the Sentinel still waking up. Pulling back would be a mistake. We stand our ground. The Sentinel is our strongest asset. We just need to figure out how to turn that into an advantage. Then we fight with what we have, Captain Core said, his expression hardening. But we need a target. We can't just shoot into the void. Zarek's mind raced, assessing the tactical advantage of their position. He knew the void's forces had been driven by fear of the Sentinel and its potential to stop them. But fear alone wouldn't win this fight. They needed strategy, they needed control, and most of all, they needed time. Focus on their leadership first, Zarek ordered. The rest of their fleet will fall in line once their command structure is disrupted. We'll disable their shields, break their coordination. Xandor worked furiously at his station, sending out calculated bursts of fire from the Sentinel's still active weapons systems. The laser blasts lanced into the oncoming alien vessels with precision, though their shields absorbed most of the damage. Direct hit, Commander, but their shields are holding. They're reinforcing their position. We need to hit them harder. Zarek clenched his jaw, eyes never leaving the display. Every decision had weight now. Every move could make or break their survival. Dr. Vex, get me the Sentinel's core systems. I want full activation. Now. Dr. Vex nodded, her hands moving deftly across the console. The screens flickered, lines of code flashing too fast to follow before they finally settled into a steady stream. It's unstable. I can't bring it online fully without risking overload. Do it anyway, Zarek ordered. We're already risking everything. Make it work. The room seemed to hold its breath as Dr. Vex's fingers flew over the controls, sweat pouring down her face. The tension was unbearable as the ship's systems hummed louder, a mechanical growl that reverberated through the floor beneath their feet. The ship was coming alive, its ancient weaponry now firing with renewed force. A sudden jolt sent Zarek stumbling forward as the Sentinel unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, the power of which even he couldn't have predicted. The alien fleet's leadership, the flagship, a colossal vessel hovering just outside their range, took the brunt of the attack. Its shields flickered and sputtered, giving way under the pressure. Direct hit on their flagship, Xandor shouted. Their main weapon systems are down, but they're still trying to retaliate. We've got a small window. Zarek's heart raced. This was their chance. All hands, brace for impact! He gripped his chair, eyes locked on the heads-up display as the alien fleet regrouped. They were far from defeated, but their leader had been struck, a critical blow that would force their hand. Captain, get the second wave ready, Zarek said, his voice urgent. We need to disrupt their coordination while they're on the defensive. I want those ships separated. Captain Core gave a quick nod, turning to Lieutenant Valek. Deploy the second wave, now. The ship groaned as it shifted under the strain of the ongoing battle. The lights flickered, and Zarek could feel the pressure building. The Sentinel was responding, but it was a beast that needed to be tamed, its raw power still too chaotic to control with full precision. Another blast shook the ship, this one more powerful than before. They're focusing on us, Commander, Xandor called out, voice strained. They know we're the weakest link. Not for long, Zarek muttered, his gaze steely as he adjusted the coordinates on the laser plasma display. He could feel the weight of the decision in his gut. The next move had to be calculated to the millisecond. The alien ships were closing in fast. Time was no longer a luxury they could afford. Zarek's eyes flicked to the tactical display. The Sentinel was on the verge of full power, but the alien fleet was overwhelming their position. Still, their leadership was wounded. If they could press their advantage now. Target the flagship's engines, fire everything we have, Zarek commanded. The Sentinel's massive weapons fired once more, an unstoppable force that tore into the alien flagship. The ship's engine core erupted in a flash of blue and white, its defensive shields collapsing under the onslaught. The flagship, now crippled, began to drift aimlessly, its remaining forces scattering in confusion. Zarek allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, though it was fleeting. There was no time to celebrate. The battle was far from over, and the void, true to its nature, was still closing in. "Admiral Riven, status report," Zarek called, his voice sharp with urgency. "We're holding, Commander," came the reply. "But the Void's forces are regrouping. We have about 30 minutes before their reinforcements arrive." 30 minutes. A heartbeat in the grand scheme of things. "Then we move fast," Zarek said, the fire in his chest burning hotter. "Prepare for the next phase. We take the fight to them." The figures in front of Voss weren't enemies. They were something entirely different. Human-like, but unmistakably alien, their outlines flickered with an ethereal glow, like shadows trying to break free from the constraints of the world they existed in. Voss's eyes narrowed, the tension in his chest growing as he realized that these beings weren't merely a product of the ship's technology. They were the Elder Star's true crew. "Commander," Maros whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "What are they?" Voss stood motionless, studying them. The beings didn't speak, but their presence was undeniable, powerful. It was clear they had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, perhaps guided by the same force that now held humanity in its grasp. It felt like an ancient intelligence, older than anything Earth could comprehend, but it wasn't hostile. Instead, it seemed waiting. One of the beings stepped forward, its movements fluid, its form constantly shifting between human and something more alien. A sense of recognition passed through Voss, a silent understanding that this was not an encounter of war, it was an invitation, a call to humanity, one that demanded more than just survival. "You came," the being's voice echoed, though there were no words, only thoughts transmitted directly into Voss's mind. The communication was so direct, so intimate, that he felt his own breath freeze in his chest. "You were expected." Voss didn't flinch. He had expected something like this, something beyond the reach of the known universe. The reality of the Elder Star wasn't just its power, it was its message. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through overwhelming force, but through the strength to stand, to adapt, and to evolve. Humanity wasn't just another species vying for power. It had a unique ability to rise when all seemed lost, to create something from nothing, to forge its own future when given the chance. "Expected?" Voss echoed, his voice strong despite the weight of the revelation. "By whom?" The being tilted its head, a ripple passing through its form as if it were weighing the words before answering. "By all who came before you, all who understood what you are becoming. You have shown your capacity for change, your resolve. You are the next step." Voss's heart skipped a beat as the weight of those words settled on him. The next step. He had known the Elder Star was humanity's answer to the galaxy, but this, the idea that they had crossed a threshold not just of survival, but of purpose, was something different. The truth of their struggle, of their fight to be more than what they were, had led them here. "We're not just survivors," Voss murmured, his voice low. The realization hit him like a wave crashing against the shore, pulling him deeper. "We are the future." The being before him nodded, its glowing eyes not just seeing him, but understanding him. It reached out, its hand hovering above a console embedded into the ship's wall. The air around it shifted, like a ripple across the surface of still water, and suddenly, the laser plasma display flared to life. Humanity's future, its potential, was now laid bare in front of him. The display flickered, showing not just the vastness of space, but the countless possibilities that stretched out before them. New worlds, new technologies, new allies, and enemies. And at the center of it all, the Elder Star was not just a ship. It was a symbol, a living testament to the idea that humanity was no longer just struggling to exist. They were ready to shape the stars themselves. Voss's mind raced. He thought of the war, of the scar, of everything that had led him here. and as the ship's display shifted again, showing the destruction wrought by the swarm and other alien invaders, he saw it. Humanity's fight was just beginning. But now they had the tools, the knowledge, and the will to fight back, to survive, and to adapt faster than any other species. "This is what you wanted from us?" Voss asked, his voice tight, full of the weight of understanding. "To fight? To conquer?" The being's form shimmered. "Not to conquer, Commander, to evolve. You are no longer simply reacting to the threats of others. You are creating a new future, one where you guide the course of history." Voss felt a surge of emotion, pride, awe, and fear. He knew what this meant. Humanity was no longer just a fledgling species on the edge of the galaxy, struggling to keep pace with older civilizations. They had evolved. They had become something more. And now, they were responsible for the future of the galaxy. "We're ready," Voss said, his voice firmer now, the uncertainty fading from his words. "We can handle this." The being nodded once more, its form rippling like liquid light. "You have already begun. But your journey is not just about power. It is about understanding. You must learn from all who have come before you. And you must build upon their wisdom, not through violence, but through unity. And the first step is understanding the Elder Star." As the being finished speaking, the display shifted once more, showing images of different cultures, humanity's first encounters with alien species, the formation of new alliances, the blending of human ingenuity with alien technology. It was a story of growth, of adaptation, of a species no longer content to stand at the mercy of others. Voss turned to his crew, each one staring at the display, their faces a mix of disbelief and awe. They had fought for this moment, but now it was clear that the true battle lay ahead. Not just to protect Earth, but to protect the future of every species in the galaxy. "We won't just survive," Voss said, his voice resonating in the quiet room, every word deliberate, every word a promise. "We'll make sure the galaxy knows what humanity is capable of." Kalen Dorr, standing behind him, finally spoke up, his voice a quiet reflection of Voss's own thoughts. "We're not just the next step, Commander. We're the beginning of something new." Voss turned to look at the crew, their eyes filled with a mix of wonder and determination. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were the architects of a new future. "The war is over," Voss said, his voice unwavering. "But our journey is just beginning." As he spoke, the Elder Star seemed to pulse in response, its walls alive with energy, its systems humming as they adapted to the new path humanity had chosen. The stars beyond the ship's viewports weren't just distant lights. They were now the destination of a species that had earned its place among them. No longer fighting for survival, humanity had begun to shape its own future. The galaxy had its answer. Humanity wasn't just a species that existed. It was a force, a presence that could no longer be ignored. And as the Elder Star surged forward, humanity surged with it, unshackled, unstoppable, and ready for what lay ahead. The stars would soon know what it meant to stand in the path of humanity.